Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Excellent. And I will ask, please, if everyone can turn on your videos, just so that we can see who's on the call. And really, this is more of a casual chat than anything formal, but it would be lovely if we could see your faces. And firstly, I would like to say happy IZE Day to everybody. It's I think it's our third annual International Day of Zoo and Aquarium Educators, so it's really exciting to have us kick it off in our part of the world, since we lead the world obviously in time as well as other things. So what I thought I would do is I'll just get everyone who's on the call. So there's about 12 of us at the moment. So I'll just get everyone to introduce themselves if they can, and I'll just go down the, it may be easiest if I just call on you. So if you can just let me know who you are, where you're from, and yeah, if you've got any special plans to celebrate IZE Day. Akane, would you like to go first?
How did I know you were going to call on me first, Amy? Hi everyone, my name's Akane. I work at Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. I am also the website editor and graphic designer for IZE. So I've been on the board for a couple of years. It's quite fun. I don't know if you guys were there at the conference this year, but I was playing social host, so you might know my face from coming up with all those fun and crazy activities. I don't think we have too much planned for IZE here at Lone Pine. I think we are doing a social media post though to thank all the educators around the world. And that's it from me.
Cool, thank you. Next I see on my list is Francis. So Francis, I know it's early morning for you, but if you would like to introduce yourselves to all of our members, that would be fantastic. Maybe too early in the morning for Francis. I think it's about 6 a.m. Hong Kong time. So I will come back to you, Francis. Genevieve, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from and if you've got any plans for IZE Day today? Genevieve, are you there? I'm not having much luck here with people. Sarah Thomas, I can see you're there. You could maybe tell us who you are and what your plans are for IZE Day.
You're right, Amy.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I'm joining from the comfort of my own home. I've got a day off today. Yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm the head of conservation advocacy and engagement at Wellington Zoo. I have been part of the Oceania region for about a year and a half now. So yeah, delighted to celebrate International Zoo Educator Day from the other side of the world. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Amy, I can see you're there from our National Aquarium in New Zealand. If you'd like to say hi, that'd be great.
No worries. Hi, I'm Amy Stevens from the National Aquarium of New Zealand, education manager. And for today, we'd like, and you're just doing social media posts today, but we have passed out the chocolate this morning as well, which was really needed.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've got cake for later on. I think we might need it. Genevieve, I can see you now. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Amy. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Sorry, I missed you just then. I was letting my dog out. So yeah, it's lovely to see everyone's faces. My name's Genevieve Johnson and I'm from Zoos Victoria, part of the education team there. So just really happy to be here and connecting with everybody and catching up on what everyone's doing, and sharing all of our incredible learnings over the past year. So even though we're in probably the wrong time zone down here, we'll be staying up late tonight, I think, and early tomorrow morning to hear from all of the wonderful speakers that you've got planned.
Fantastic. And I see one of your colleagues, Kirsten, up there. Kirsten, would you like to say hi?
Hi everyone. I was just really excited to see some familiar faces, and I realised I was grinning like a bit of a silly person, and then I realised there was everybody there. It's so nice. I feel I've been living on my own for a while, so when I see familiar faces, I get really, really excited. Happy Zoo Education Day, everybody. It's so wonderful to see you.
Great to see you too. And yeah, I'm sure you guys are feeling much better now that you can actually get out of the house and have the zoo open and actually slide your way back to normalcy.
Yeah, starting to head in the right direction.
Great. Christine, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute still. I can see you talking.
There we go.
Fantastic.
I'm Chris Schmitz. I'm the Director of Education at Utah's Hogle Zoo, and it's snowing here. But for tomorrow, we'll be posting because it falls tomorrow here. And I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do as a department, since we all have to stay 6 feet apart and not be anywhere near anyone. But we will be doing regular education programs tomorrow besides.
Fantastic. I think that's something we're all trying to figure out, is how to celebrate. And I mean, we're very lucky in New Zealand, but how to celebrate at a distance in some areas. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Eric van Vliet. I'm a zoo designer. And I strongly believe that zoo design should be a tool in the hands of education. That's why I try to follow everything that happens in the field of education. So I'm really looking forward.
Fantastic, thank you. And Antonietta, thank you for joining us in the middle of the night. Lovely to see you.
Hi everybody. Happy ICT Day for all. Well, it's past 11 in the evening here, but well, I couldn't miss it. So I work at Lisbon Zoo. I'm head of education at Lisbon Zoo, and IZE Europe and Middle East representative since last year. So, and I'm so happy to be with you here all today. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanne Wilson has snuck onto the call, I see. Hi, Leanne.
Hello, everyone, and good morning for us. I'm General Manager of Community Conservation at Zoos Victoria, but also part of the IZE board as the journal editor. So I'm also here to, one, celebrate IZE Day with you, but also to call out for any abstracts or article ideas, to email them through to me. Love to hear from them for the next journal, for next year's journal.
It seems like that's way too quickly, I have to say.
Yep.
Who else is on my list? Lois, can I ask you to introduce yourself to us, please? No, okay, that's all right. Michelle, would you like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Michelle. I manage the education team at Melbourne Zoo. You can see a few of my Zoos Victoria people here today, which is really nice. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. It's nice to see the our Kiwi and Australian contingent and a couple of our global colleagues on the call as well today. Lois, I see you're there. If you could like to, no, okay. Sorry, I'm just working through my list. Victoria, you've just joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry, just getting on here. Was running a little late. My name is Victoria Dunch, and I work at the San Diego Zoo. And I was just curious to join in on these sessions. This is one of the only ones that I can join. So
fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. Is there anyone else who hasn't introduced themselves who would like to? No? Okay. So I thought this is really supposed to be quite a relaxed general chat, just to ease into IZE Day. It's all right for us because we're at midday, but for some of you it's early in the morning or late at night. So I thought I've got a couple of questions here, and I just thought really it's about having a chat and seeing what people have been through this year. So I just wondered if anyone would like to share maybe their top 2 biggest learnings from this year and all the stuff we've been through, and if they've had to adapt their programs, maybe how they've adapted them or how quickly they've adapted them. So if anyone would like to share, that would be great.
Happy to jump in. We've transferred a lot of our education programs online, and one of the biggest learnings I think for us has just been learning the different platforms that are available and how effective they can be in communicating with an audience much wider than the usual audience that would be visiting our zoos on excursion. So although it's been challenging at times, it's also had, there's been a lot of positives that have come out of it in terms of being able to increase our audience and talk to students and teachers who perhaps wouldn't normally come on site physically. So the virtual experience has been great in that sense. Also sort of rethinking about some of the ways that we can connect with students and give feedback, and certainly the whole Zoos Victoria education team's been working really closely together to look at different platforms like Flipgrid projects to us, and then we can review them and send videos back. So that's been really interesting.
I've got a question for you guys, and actually for anyone who's found that they've done more online learning and changed some of that. Are organisations charging schools? Because I guess that's one of the things that we've talked about is just generally, you know, schools are, you know, not huge revenue earners, but there is a solid income. And by moving to online, we had a, you know, big discussion. Obviously during lockdown, everything was no charge, but moving out of lockdown in New Zealand, we had a big discussion about charging. So I just wondered if other people who have had those discussions in their organisations or what approach they've taken.
Hi, yeah, we've actually did the same. So we were doing free virtual classrooms and online resources during lockdown. And now we've moved to charging for virtual engagement classrooms, but still doing the free resource handbooks that we've promoted and done for the teachers. So we've got a main page that we do for that. But to answer your previous question, I know everyone's going to be saying that they've adapted for virtual and going online and engagement, but we've actually felt that the positive that's come out of this year is actually our team cohesion. Everyone's just gelled so much more together over this whole period, and we've learnt each other's new strengths and what we can actually do together. So it's actually created a much better team for all of us. Don't know if it's the same for everyone else.
Great, thanks, Amy. Does anyone else have any learnings from their going online and what they've done?
Can I just ask, I want to ask Amy, since changing it, so
Which Amy?
it's a oh, sorry, Amy Stevens, who was just speaking, not Amy Hughes, host. Charging now for those virtual online programs. Are you getting schools paying for those? Is it like the schools that would have come to you if it wasn't for COVID are now paying for those? Or can you just give us an insight of what you found with that?
Yeah, sure. We've since coming out of lockdown, we've slowly, just over the last month, 6 weeks, seen an increase in actually our local schools coming back to us. So we have had a drop off of the virtual engagement on that front. But we have still got quite a few that book in for the paid one, and it's a minimal charge compared to what we would charge for them to come in. So it's they also get pre-resources and post-activities with the engagement as well. So we still have got a few, but obviously it has dropped off since we've had our local schools able to come and attend actual sessions.
Thanks, Amy. Sarah, in New Zealand, obviously Auckland was in lockdown or in level 3, and we're back into level 3 when the rest of the country could still have schools. How did you guys approach that? Were you doing free online learning?
Yeah, we were. I think like I don't know, a lot of local authority zoos, our technology is not great. Our connectivity and what we can use wasn't brilliant, and especially from working from home. And so we had quite a lot of online resources that we relied on rather than connecting with schools in the way that I know that Antoinetta did an amazing job in Portugal with her online learning programs. But what's been interesting is once we've come out of lockdown, all the schools that were booked in for term 3 have now, we've looked at the analysis of how many have rebooked for term 4. And so our term 4, which is now, sorry for Europe and the rest of the world, you're probably thinking what we're talking about. But in terms of the returning back to the zoo, what we found is people still want that kind of on-site engagement. And certainly our conversations is how can we maintain that kind of on-site engagement, but then add in that kind of digital platform. But at the moment, we don't have the kind of right technology, the right equipment, the right resources to actually do that in a good way at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that. One of the things we talk about a lot as well is actually part of the learning is having kids come to the zoo, because that's part of that experience of actually being here and seeing animals and talking to keepers is really what we want to encourage. So we set up we did some online sessions when we're in lockdown, and then we have the option for schools to do online, but we are charging, and I don't think anyone's taken that up. Everyone is just coming back to the zoo because it just, it makes sense for them and makes sense for us, I guess.
And for us, it's a bit too early to tell because we only just come out of lockdown here. And so for all of this term, we'd planned to run free virtual excursions with a paid trial for a program to see how that went before setting up for next year. But we've just had restrictions left on schools having excursions. So they're now allowed to resume excursions, but we didn't we anticipate that. So we're just working through whether we'd be able to get schools back self-guided on site. So we're sort of in a bit of a mixed state at the moment in terms of what we're doing, but there's still a whole schedule of free with a paid trial that we're hoping to learn from for next year.
Cool, thanks, Leanne. For you guys, and probably maybe more for Auckland because you had that longer lockdown, how are your educators feeling about taking sessions again, having been in lockdown relatively recently? Is there any reticence, or are people feeling pretty comfortable getting back out there?
I think in Auckland we had that kind of level 2 period where the zoo was open, but the schools weren't allowed to visit because of the group size, and so our kind of different teams in conservation advocacy engagement were out in the zoo, in like a mega team and a mega engagement team. So they really enjoyed being out in the zoo, engaging with all sorts of different visitors, not just your kind of classic school groups. And that is something that we're trying to embed within our programs more, because we're realizing that yes, you can have the formal bookable side, but actually being out in the zoo is a really nice added value. When the schools have come back, the thing that we did was we just did a lot of, I guess, risk assessment and conversations about how we're kind of mitigating those measures. We did have schools that were booked in, and then there was a pop-up community case nearby, and actually the school had cancelled, so they weren't coming in. And so it was just putting all those kind of, I guess, back end stuff to make sure our teams felt supported and secure, and that they weren't kind of being asked to go into environments or situations which would put their own health at risk. And that was really important for us to do.
I think that's probably a good question too for you, Jen, as well, because you'll be coming up, even next year to teaching again with students, and how you're feeling.
Yeah, well, I must say I'm very excited to get out of the house and to not be teaching from my 11-year-old daughter's bedroom anymore and trying to put up different backgrounds, so I'm hiding where I am. But it's also a bit of fun as well. And I think one of the real pros or the silver linings of this whole sort of unprecedented experience is that the educators have really taken on and learnt a whole new suite of skills that are going to take us to places that we didn't know we could go on site, and continuing online as well. And I think at the beginning there was probably a little bit of trepidation because there was a new suite of platforms that we had to learn, and also troubleshoot while you're in the midst of teaching a bunch of students, and it could have been one class or it could have been 1,000 students. And so there was a lot of that to work through, but I think the confidence level has lifted to such an extent that the educators are in this position now where they feel incredibly confident to take on whatever is sort of thrown our way. And I know everyone in our team at least is super keen to be back on site, but I think we're equally confident to continue the online as well, to continue engaging, as Kirst said, those audiences that may not necessarily come to the school, come to the zoo. So those rural schools, the lower socioeconomic schools, or schools that may come once every couple of years, and then they can engage in the alternative years online. And these are things that we haven't really done before. And this has been a trial almost by necessity. And we've realised that we have the capacity to do things that we didn't know we could do, that we've talked about in the past, but we haven't actually got around to doing it. So I think there's lots of pros, and I think all in all, the educators are quite pleased with themselves and feeling good about their skill level now and these new skills that they've learned, and just ready to get back on site. So yeah, it's exciting times. Like I said, we've got to look at the silver linings, and there's definitely been a lot of silver linings to this experience.
Does anyone else got anything to add about how they or the educators are feeling now that schools are coming back in? Or are there any organisations that still aren't having schools back in, and how you're dealing with that?
I can jump in there. We're all Zoos Victoria speaking here, but at Melbourne Zoo, our team is allowed back on site. They aren't at Werribee and Hillsville yet. So it's just been really good for us to come back on site and re-engage with the property, because while we were in lockdown, we were kind of just in one environment all the time. It felt like Groundhog Day in a way. So we're really excited to have students back, but I think the uncertainty ahead for us is we're still trying to work out what that means when students are back. So for example, in Victoria, we have to wear masks. And so teaching with a mask will be an absolute challenge. I'm finding it hard to understand people myself when they're talking to me with a mask. So there's just things like that that we need to navigate. And we don't want to sort of do a lot of work on what that is now, because it will keep changing. It changes every day. So we'll probably leave it to the last second and work out what it is to have a school on site and manage that really well. But yeah, we're very excited to have students back again and do what we're sort of born to do. But I have enjoyed sort of the humour that's happened during this time as well. So the families that have joined us, or the weird noises that you hear in the background, or the cat that walks across the screen, or the new language that we have, like you're on mute. So yeah, we've built a bit of fun into it as well in these strange times. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Have you guys also seen that schools are willing to book and come back now, or is it been a bit quiet?
Yeah, we actually had a visitor the other day, because we're allowed to have 3,000 visitors at Melbourne Zoo now. And one of those visitors was a teacher inquiring about trying to book, and really trying every avenue she could to make a booking. And we kept saying, we can't take your booking yet. So she said, we're just gagging to come back. All the students really want to come back to the zoo. So I think there is, yeah, some keenness out there for schools to come back. I'm sure there'll be some that'll be pretty anxious about it and risk averse, and we might not see them for some time, but I think it just depends on the school and the teacher.
Thanks. Akane, what's happening up in tropical Queensland?
We're pretty back to normal, like the schools. I'm going to unmute Kayla as well, because she's on here. She's our head of education. So now there's like bounce back. She's in the other room. But yeah, like the schools were so keen to come back, and then they've come back, and we're pretty busy. We did at the start, we're a bit like, oh, how are we going to do this? Because we couldn't really do like touching of the animals and all that kind of stuff. But they didn't care. They were just like, we just want to be back and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to throw it across to Kayla, because she can explain a bit more about what's going on here with our education team.
Hello, is that working? Cool. Yeah, we were very, very grateful to get school groups back. It felt like a little bit of normalcy, even just seeing the little group of kids with their little school uniforms. I had so many staff come up to me and say, oh, it's so good to have school groups back. And we just found that the teachers were just so keen to get the kids out of the classroom. They all said, oh, it's so good to be out. It's just so good to be back. And we have changed our programs. We've not included any touching of animals and just showing, which really they don't seem to mind at all. We had to remove a lot of our seating. So we've just told the groups, hey, guess what? You get to have a picnic and bring a picnic rug or make use of our picnic tables. But other than that, it's we're very lucky, and I need to touch wood. We're lucky here in Queensland to have been able to return to almost normal. And we've just found that there's been like a flood of groups wanting to come to visit.
We did find that though, some schools were keen and just kind of forgot that COVID was a thing though. So that was a few issues as well, because they just, even though we'd do the big greeting and be like, hey guys, remember social distance, this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. They just wouldn't. So then it was affecting general public, like certain shows and things like that, because it was very limited capacity at like the Raptor show and things like that. And we would explain that to the schools, and then just like, yeah, and then just like run in there, and we're like, oh, cool. And so that was actually a bit of a challenge as well, because as much as we want the schools to be back and it's exciting for them, they were just so excited, and then just completely forgetting about COVID and stuff in a social situation, because of course at school, they don't have to social distance because they're at school together and all that kind of stuff. So that was a bit of a challenge, especially at the start when we were very limited with how many people we could have in certain areas and things like that. But again, our restrictions have eased again, so it's less of a problem, but that was definitely a challenge at the beginning.
Yeah, we found there were kind of two sorts of visitors once we reopened, and there are the ones who are like super paranoid about people being around them and would, you know, like kind of run away from other people, and then a whole lot of people who actually, like you say, kind of just forgot that COVID had ever happened and just would stand next to people, and we were just like, we're not going to be the COVID police. You're all adults, you know, move yourselves away if you want distancing. But trying to walk around the zoo and saying keep apart was just way too hard, right? And also not very welcoming either. And we had a really interesting discussion about that. How far does our responsibility go? You know, we put up signs and we put stuff on the ground, and you know, we talked to people when they came in and said, please remember to physically distance. But then we were like, we can't actually be fully responsible for adults.
Yeah, we've found the same thing. And I feel like the teachers, maybe because they don't have to social distance with the kids at school, like they've actually been the most slack with it. I guess they've kind of let their guards down because they're at school, they're surrounded by kids, they've got, you know, this social distancing hasn't really applied to them. So we've had to really reinforce it to the teachers to make sure not only are you social, like if you're bringing chaperones, those chaperones don't live in the same household. They need to social distance from each other. And you guys are kind of responsible for managing that and putting the onus back onto the teachers, but just making it clear as well, like you need to make sure that your kids social distance from other guests. We want to make sure that the guests feel safe and have a comfortable, safe experience. Making especially noting like the enclosed areas like the reptile house and our platypus house, which is an enclosed space, and saying, hey, just peek in there first before you let your group of like 10 kids go running into the reptile house. Just take a peek in, make sure there's nobody in there. If there is, just wait and come back later. Yeah, it's been a challenge.
I think that's a learning from New Zealand, having been out of lockdown. We don't have social distancing requirements or mask wearing requirements, but everyone really quickly forgets what it was like. And once they are allowed to start doing stuff again, they just think that everything's going back to normal. So we had a case in Wellington for the first time since, I think it was April this week. And so everyone just got, I mean, there's no risk. The person was put into isolation pretty quickly, but I think we've just spent the last 4 months going about our lives as normal. And as stuff opened, like people just, like you say, kind of forgot that it was a thing. School groups and visitors, but just, yeah, anyone coming in, it's just like, if we can do those things again, we must all be fine. It's been a really interesting time to watch and try and remind people they have to wash their hands or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. In Auckland, we people soon forgot, and you know, you realise that if you've got a baby rhino or a lion roars or a, you know, keepers wash an elephant, then the distancing is soon forgotten. And so we had lots of discussions about how do you have like excellent visitor experience and safety at the same time. And certainly our engagement teams, the people who are brought together, learned a lot about how we can manage the situation. And, you know, as you were saying, Amy, what's in our remit and what absolutely is outside. And so how do we socially nudge people to kind of try and do what we want, but actually saying, you know, we've done our due diligence and we can't control all the people coming in. And, you know, interestingly, when we've got down to this level 1, we've still asking people to contact trace when they come into the zoo. And so we had our different signs and our discussions about, would people still do that? And actually, you know, doing some kind of informal visitor observations, they were at the beginning, but now it's soon tailed off. All the same signage is in place, but I think the longer we go without recurrent cases, people just kind of, and I'm the same, you know, you think, oh, I should do, you know, go to the supermarket. Used to be very religiously kind of doing your contact tracing. You know, the other day I came back from the supermarket thinking, oh, I completely forgot, because you soon lose those kind of ways of doing. And I appreciate our visitors are exactly the same. It's not, it kind of soon goes out of the forefront of their mind. They're back to just saying we're coming to the zoo and that's our main point of focus. So it's been a really interesting kind of discussions about human behaviour and how do we use what we know about human behaviour to kind of, I guess, nudge them into social distancing, but also still giving that kind of good visitor experience.
Yeah, I think that's true. Amy, how different is it for you being in an inside facility, an indoors facility, and was it difficult for you guys to manage the social distancing?
Yeah, to begin with it was. God, the amount of masking tape, pink, green, X's and 1.5 meters back from all the aquarium tanks triangled around. It looked like a spaghetti junction of where you should and shouldn't stand. We had a couple of members of staff who were quite nervous about coming back, and they'd see people step into the space and be touching the glass, and it quite upset them. So we had to have quite a gentle talk about how to step away from the tanks and touching the glass. Wasn't a great idea. But yeah, we had the first school holidays that happened after we all came out was, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, were actually rammed. It was really busy, and you could just see certain members of the staff with that look on their face of slight panic of, wow, we've got queues of people wanting to go into the Oceanarium tunnel, and the tunnel is absolutely packed shoulder to shoulder, and we had to position staff around the tunnel to actually ask people to keep moving and to keep social distancing, because it was really unsafe. So it's been a big learning curve, but as Sarah just said, it was actually something that was said yesterday as well, is now we've noticed after all these months, no one's bothered. It's kind of, no one's tracking, tracing, no one's doing anything, and yeah, it's a bit shocking really when you think about it, when what's happening around the world, and here we are just going about our normal business. But yeah, it affected us quite a bit being an inside enclosed space for staff and visitors.
Yeah, we've started actually asking our visitors to make sure they track and they scan in when they come in, just for that reason that everybody has got slack, I think. Okay, so we've had a good old chat about the year. I've got another question that I thought we could talk about. This is not hopefully everyone has seen the new Conservation Education Global Strategy, authored by Dr. Sarah Thomas and championed by IZE. So what I was wondering is if any of you guys in your organisations have started to look and think about how you might implement this strategy, but also I'm really interested in whether people have shared it with other people in their organisation, and particularly their directors or managers or even people in animal care teams. So I was just wondering if anyone's got any, has anyone thought about it? I know there's a lot going on, but if people have looked at it and thought about how they might implement it, I'd be super interested to hear that.
Yeah, we've had a good read through it and absolutely enjoyed the content that was in it. In fact, exceptionally useful. We've shared it just this week actually with all staff. So it's gone out to all staff for the whole aquarium. That's visitor services, front of house and animal team as well. And the next general staff meeting will be highlighting key points that we want to pull out from the strategy to work with first. And that, I think for us, after going through COVID and the restrictions, it's enabling staff. So we're looking at more training and more empowering of our people first, just because of what they've been through, just to try and make them feel a little bit more loved and appreciated. So that's what we're doing with the very amazing document that we received.
Great, thank you, Amy, because sometimes you write these documents and you don't know if people actually act on them. I can see Sarah nodding because she's like put this work out there into the world. And it's good to know that people are actually looking at it and starting to think about how they might use it as a framework. Has anyone else in their organisation looked at it or started to think about how you might implement any of the learnings in the strategy?
Plans to. So I have shared it more broadly in the organisations, but we have plans to run a workshop in February. So once we get through this summer period and reopening period, and that will include the broader staff as well. So making sure that we bring together people from all the various departments beyond education.
Yeah, I think that's important because it's not while it's an education strategy, everybody's job is education in the zoos, right? Whether you're a keeper or a zoo director, it's all part of what happens in the zoo. Sarah, do you want to, have you guys got plans in Auckland? I'm assuming, because you've got plans in Auckland.
No. Yeah, I think like Leanne, it's I'm aware that here, you know, once you get into December, lots of people on leave, you know, it's our busiest period with the school holidays. And so I think the broader kind of, you know, workshopping and discussion will happen after January. I think what's interesting here is certainly our thinking, well, our thinking has informed the strategy and the strategy has informed our thinking. And certainly, as an organisation, we're going through a process of change, really thinking about how we change the way we look at lots of different things, including conservation education. How do we set ourselves up for success? So thinking about, you know, looking at more training, more kind of vocational learning, more community engagement and outreach, and really thinking about the kind of themes that came out. And, you know, and drawing in from what we've learned from the COVID situation, how do we deliver stuff online, on sites, off sites, and really thinking about it kind of in a broader sense. But also, how do we, to your point, Amy, how do we empower all our staff? You know, we can't just say, okay, be a brilliant communicator, you know, deliver these messages, drive social change without the kind of support mechanisms. So I think, you know, we're trying to think about what does the next few years look like because of the situation we're in as an organisation, but also drawing in from that external framework. And, you know, I would hope that the next bit for the IZE community is thinking, okay, there's a strategic document. Now, how do we kind of turn that into operational procedures and practices? And, you know, if we're saying, how do you write, you know, you need a conservation education plan. And certainly people will be like, okay, so how do I do that? You know, you can't just say, write a plan and expect magically everybody to know what to do. So I would hope that that we all see how we can translate it into some really good actions, both as organisations, but also as regional communities as well. Because, you know, it will sit on a shelf and look beautiful, but we just need to then work out how to translate that into our day-to-day practices.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if one thing this year has taught us is it's while it's not always the most fun, it is easy and possible to network online. So, you know, if there are trainings or workshops that some organisations are holding, maybe other organisations can dial in and go, actually, we'd love to see how you're doing it at Auckland or how you're doing it at Zoos Victoria. So we've got this kind of regional or global, I'm just talking regional because that's my remit, but the global approach to thinking about how to set up, like you say, how to set up those conservation education plans, or how to share, if we've done training with across our zoos or aquariums, like what that looks like in different places. Do you have frameworks that you can share? Are you happy to talk through it with a bunch of people? I think that for me, this really embracing that kind of, as much as I love to see everybody's face every 2 years at the IZE conference, realizing that we can have really good discussions and networking and learning and workshops online, and thinking about how we can do more of that. And I think I'd love to hear from anyone in our region if there's anything they want to look at, and I'm more than happy to set that up. Really think about how we use the networks to do more learning. What are my other questions?
Can I ask Eric a question? As an external consultant, how have you found the strategy? Are you going to use that with your kind of connections? Because obviously we use it within our own organisation. Sorry, Amy, to kind of ask a random question. But Eric, have you read the strategy, and are you going to do you think it's useful for your work as a consultant supporting, I know you support a lot of smaller zoos that don't have big education departments, so I'm interested in that.
The first question, yes, I did read it, and I congratulate everybody who worked on it with the result. It's a very clear text, and like some earlier strategies, I would say. So it's really something to work with. In a lot of zoos, there is no notion that education could play a role and should really play a role in the early beginning of a project. It's a sort of thing you glue to it when the project is ready. And well, the strategy gives some ideas how to introduce the whole idea of education in a much earlier phase of the project planning. So yes, it is helpful, and we do use it. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to talk about it as putting the tires on at the end once the car is built. Like,
yeah.
You know, my background is marketing and comms was the same. It's like, oh, we've done this thing, now you have to talk about it. And we're like, well, it would be way easier for us to talk about it if we were involved in some of the design decisions around where the motor goes and what colour seats we're getting. And that, for me, I'm really lucky because our zoo director is an ex-zoo educator. So we have been, we're always around the project table and actually have as loud a voice as animal care or anyone else in the room, because it is so, like you say, Eric, it is so crucial you have that stuff integrated into how you design things rather than just having a sign stuck on a building at the end.
Yeah, or worse, like, oh, here's a piece of a wall we didn't envisage, and it's all of a sudden there. Let's make an educational sign to hide it. You know, that kind of attitude is still around. Whether you know the story you want to tell in the first place when you create a new themed area or a new exhibit or a new you do a revamp of an older part of the zoo, should be educational in the first place.
And I think that was one of the driving forces behind the development of the strategy, was lifting education up to making sure it was considered, when conservation and animal welfare, and that it was seen as important by everybody in the zoo as everything else we do, rather than just something that happens when people, teach kids and that's all they do, but really lifting the idea of education, I think, and promoting what it means. I think that's it for my list of questions, my very hastily scribbled questions, but does anyone else have anything they want to chat about, ask anyone questions of? It's a really good opportunity to ask Sarah questions about the strategy as the author, or if anyone wants to know anything else about coming out of COVID and how we experience that, or out of lockdowns. Floor is open.
I just wanted to say a massive congratulations to you, Sarah. I think the body of work that you've put together to give zoos and aquariums this sort of true north around conservation education is something that we haven't had before, certainly in such a comprehensive way, and to a certain degree everyone sort of does their own thing and follows their own strategies, which is fine, but to have this collective vision that we can all follow and continue to learn from and keep evolving and supporting each other, I just think it's phenomenal. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and just really excited to see where it goes into the future to supporting conservation education. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I think it's I can't take all of the credit at all, because it was a cast of thousands. I think well, if my numbers are right, about 350 people were involved. And I certainly felt it's like the last 18 years of my zoo career kind of like all trying to draw together into like where are we going. Fortunately, we had some kind of prior experience with the stuff that we did with the IAZE conservation education standards that were published about 4 years ago. And so the first bit was looking at what standards and practices and, you know, frameworks were there. And I don't know whether there were some kind of education standards for Oceania for this region, I think, for ZAR. But actually the feedback I got from quite a few people saying it's fine, you know, now is the time for us to refresh and renew. And certainly actually having a global framework that we can all pull towards, I think is really useful. And the thing that was probably the most difficult is how do you make it vague enough that it's fit for 180 odd countries globally, but specific enough that guides people along that track. I'm glad to see that the US elections are hopefully going the way they should, but the feedback was that we couldn't include the word climate change in the strategy because of the outgoing government, because they would not endorse a strategy, especially government-run zoos. You'll notice there is no specific reference of LGBTQ diversities, because a lot of our other countries that gave feedback saying you can't mention that because, you know, again, we won't be able to endorse that. So for me, far more than I thought, because it was a lot of, you know, checking in with people and just making sure that everything that I was thinking and drawing together from people's voices was on the right track. And that there'll be stuff that you were really surprised at, even like, you know, putting a word or a sentence and people like, that doesn't make any sense to my language or my kind of context. So it was certainly a labor of love, but I'm delighted that now it's gone out, that people are actually getting to grips with it. And yeah, you know, I've got to thank all the people involved. Amy was a key editor at the start, the middle, the end. And so, yeah, having those kind of key people and the 43 countries, 180 institutions meant hopefully it will kind of work in that kind of global context rather than, you know, it is the mind of Sarah Thomas and some thoughts that she has around conservation education, which is definitely what it's not. I think I was just the facilitator that got it onto a bit of paper. And then the team at San Diego did an amazing job getting it designed. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. It was a good, as you say, it was a good team effort, and thanks to everyone who contributed, whether it was a case study or a photo or anything. So well done, everyone. One thing I forgot to mention at the start was that we are recording this session, so that if anyone would prefer that it not be posted for public viewing, can you just put it in the chat or drop me a line and we can say it's absolutely no problem if you don't want it posted for public viewing. I think that's probably us, unless anyone else has got anything else they want to say. It's so nice to see everyone. When I said I'd do a drop-in session, I wasn't sure if anyone would turn up, so yay, thanks for that, number one. And there's a whole lot of other amazing workshops and sessions on today, so check out the schedule. Hopefully you can go to one or two, and they will be recorded as well, so you may be able to catch up with them later on. But thanks, everybody. Happy
Amy,
IZE.
do you want to get a photo of everyone?
Oh, I would like to get a photo, Leanne. I'm going to have to use my phone though, because I'm doing this on a desktop computer.
I can do it as a screenshot if you want.
Thank you. Everyone smile.
Okay.
Say IZE on 1, 2, 3. IZE.
Done.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Hopefully you get some cake or some I told the zoo team they could give the educators a consensual hug or a high five today, so hopefully that's been happening. But have a great day, and it was really nice to see you and hear from you all, so thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Everyone.